Humans have developed for millions of years. We have mastered the use of the elements. We have the ability to create and destroy like no other animal on Earth. And there is only one organ in our body that will be made responsible for all of that evolution, that grant us the ability to be intelligent and sentient beings. I am surely not talking about the right foot or the liver. I am talking about the brain. Our brain is still a mystery in many ways. There are still things that we don't understand about the functioning of the brain, but from the tiny amount that we understand, we could use the information to create memorable and compelling games. This is game design thinking, and today we are going to explore the three brains model. So, what are the three parts of the brain? The three brains model divides the functioning of the brain into three different sections: the old, the mid, and the new brain, sometimes called the lizard brain, the emotional brain, and the rational brain. The lizard brain is called the old because it's related to basic needs, and it often regulates what is known as the fight or flight impulses. This brain is closely related to the nervous system. So if, for example, you are into a dangerous situation, it will immediately take control of the brain and send impulses through the nervous system so you can start to fight or flight. These situations usually involve immediate danger in rapidly changing environments, so you can think of any game that requires you to have fast reflexes in unexpected situations, and there you have it. Your lizard brain is doing its job. The emotional brain is what we usually think about the brain, including the concept of the mind. The emotional brain reacts to all the input that doesn't require fight or flight situations. So for example, if you are playing a game and you are constantly losing, you probably will feel frustrated or anxious, and depending on your frustration tolerance or your time, you will decide to keep playing or not. So you have an emotional input and a behavioral output. Remember that the emotional brain is unconscious. That's why we mostly don't control what we feel, and also, most of our actions don't require full concentration. We don't think, okay, I will move my left thumb closer to my index finger in order to move the left analog stick up relative to the constitution of the whole joystick, in order to the character that is displayed through my screen using pixel move forward, and you get the point. You just move the character without even thinking about it, because you have mastered the art of the joystick. The rational brain is the only one that handles conscious stuff. The rational brain is that little voice that is always rethinking your decisions in Life is Strange. The rational brain is in charge of processing all the information received by the lizard and the emotional brain and give them meaning. But we are not as rational as we think. Using the rational brain is expensive and slow, and this brain is the laziest of them all. So, sometimes, when handled with a difficult task, it will pass the information to the emotional brain and then justify the decision made by the emotional brain. This is why sometimes, when we are under pressure, we make bad decisions in games, let alone in life. So, how all this information about the brain working could be of any help when designing games? We have to relate to the model proposed by Don Norman, one of the masters of design. He proposed a model of design usually called the emotional system that allows the designers to create products directed to the three brains, therefore enhancing the user likeness of products, in our case, games. The first level is the visceral, and is all about the first look. It relates directly to the lizard brain, which, if you recall, mind the fight or flight situation. What is the first fight or flight situation that you have to take care when creating a game? The most important, at least if you want that your game is economically sustainable, is how your players will find your game and how will you ensure that they will like what they see. Surely, you want to distribute your game in one of the many game platforms that exist today. If you want to upload your game to Steam or Google Play, you will fight against hundreds of similar games to yours, and thousands overall. How to get a good first impression? I am sure you already know the answer. Graphics. Graphics are the first meeting point between you and your player, so you must care about the graphics of the game. I am not saying that you need AAA graphics with ultra-detailed characters and jaw-dropping environments. I am talking about understanding what your players want and delivering it to them in the best quality possible. The second is the behavioral level. This level, related with the emotional brain, is all about usability, how easy or difficult it is for the player to interact with your game. In games, this ranges from the physical input and how the movement of the player translates to the movement in the game, to how the player understands the rules of your game and achieves mastery of them, in order to use the system in an effective, efficient, and satisfactory manner. Effective is all about if your game achieves what it's supposed to do. It ranges from how the player expects a certain kind of movement in a platform game, all the way to how the player understands the rules. Efficiency is all about reducing noise. You can have a game with many interconnected systems, but if you have a very good tutorial and also you make a clear user interface, your players can master your game even in unexpected ways. You can see how complex strategy games like StarCraft or any Total War game have a set of dedicated players that master the systems in ways that not even the designers of those games could imagine. Compare this to many simple games that have tutorials of 30 or more minutes, using blocks of text and sometimes even adding jokes here and there. Maybe, if it fits the genre of your game, you can get away with it, but they are usually noise in the middle of the player learning the systems of your game. Satisfaction comes from how the previous expectations from the player were fulfilled by the game. If the player expects a hardcore game or a thought-provoking game, you have to give them what they are expecting. Also, satisfaction can come from usually overlooked details like frames of animation, dynamic music, and the user input, or just to enjoy a good game narrative. The last level is the reflective, linked to the rational brain. The reflective level is one of the most important to ensure success, in the way that your players have an emotional link to your game. In the reflective level, your players reflect about the game, having internal thoughts about how the game connects with his or her own personality and self-image. The player feels identified with Kratos, or the player feels about the characters from Undertale, or the player feels that the society in Frostpunk have so much in common to our society today. It is all about creating meaningful games for players. Meaning for players can come in many forms and shapes, but they have certain common elements, like allowing personalization. This is not necessarily a character creator, but more important, giving your players meaningful decisions. If the player makes a decision, they must have previous information and have a very good idea of the effect of their decision in the game. Also, give players different ways to play the game. Many games, like Celeste, give players more difficult challenge that they can fulfill if they have the skill and the patience to do it. That's the reason why many actual games have skill trees or RPG-style personalization charts, because they allow the player to use the system to their advantage. This will be perceived by your players as if they are developing at the same rate as the game character or the game system. Allow the players to reflect on past experience. This is also a twofold concept. Minding the visceral and behavioral level, your player come to your game with certain expectations based on what you offer them and previous games that they have played that are similar to your game. So they expect certain buttons and certain elements to work in a similar way to what they are accustomed. In the reflective level, try to harness the power of real systems and put them to use in your games with the necessary modifications. You can see real systems in games like Offworld Trading Company, using the system of supply and demand, but with a reduced, simplified set of resources. Or this War of Mine, that uses the survival system that players are so accustomed to, but in a new context. In this case, instead of being in the role of the war hero, you are in the role of the war victim. Being aware of trends. Trends are sometimes the must-do for certain game developers. When a game is trending in the game industry, all games, even some bad ones, will have the chance to have a pretty decent player base. But in the long run, just a few games will stand the test of time, based, many times, in a combination of all the aforementioned concepts. Also, if you launch your game too late to take advantage of the trend, you will have to take into account that players will have already a pretty solid understanding of the mechanics of the genre. So if your game have simpler systems than the competition, they will perceive your game as too simple, especially if you are directing your game to hardcore competitive players. Understanding trends is not only about taking advantage and trying to grab some money. It is about harnessing the power of psychology and sociology applied to game design. So, the ultimate question remains: why to direct your games to the three parts of the brain? Why do you use the emotional model to game design? Games are engines of emotions, so ensuring that you are communicating to the player via their emotions will give you a better chance to find players that want to play your game in the first place. Then, your player will understand and master your game. They are going to feel satisfied playing your game because their expectations were fulfilled, and they can have a challenging emotional experience. Finally, your players will identify themselves with your games, making it part of their own personality, and you will harness the power of games as art. I hope you liked this video and that it has been useful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more videos about game design and how to create more fun, engaging, and meaningful games. Have a nice day.